I'm Sherry Kendall, and welcome to Hometown Salutes. I want to interview today. Our guest is John Clarke. Welcome.
Hi, Sherry. Thank you.
So let's get started with your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Richmond, Indiana, and along with I was the oldest of four siblings for my parents, and had a normal upbringing. Lived a couple blocks from the high school, and our elementary was just a block, so walked to school. Went to Dennis Junior High over there, rode my bicycle until we got old enough to catch a ride, and graduated from Richmond in 1967, a class of 630, and I was 63rd in it, so if you do your math real quick, that was the cutoff for the top 10%.
Wow.
So that was my name to fame. But had a major while I was in there of English, math, instrumental music, which plays a part later, and drafting. And while I was there, I took two fill-in courses for just to have something for the semester. I took one course of French and one course of typing, which also plays into the future.
Okay. So what led you to join the Navy? Did you enlist, or
I enlisted.
Were you drafted?
No, I enlisted.
It was close. It was during
yes.
the drafting time, right?
It was very heavily during the drafting time. I graduated in June, and so happened as a draftsman experience, my dad, who worked for the Penn Central Railroad, found out about a drafting position in Columbus, Ohio with the railroad. And so I interviewed for that. So 3 weeks after I graduated, I moved to Columbus, Ohio for that full-time job. Lived a couple blocks off Ohio State campus, and was planning on taking night courses there part-time for further education. Found out I was short one prerequisite for them, which was physics.
Oh, no.
Yes. So I was trying to take that at night and so on, and come November of 67, obviously I didn't have enough college credits going, and so I got a letter from the draft board to report for my physical. And at that time in 67, if 99.9% you knew where you were going if you were drafted. And so I decided, and I enlisted in the Navy on the 17th of December. And they had a 3-month delay program then, so I didn't actually leave till March.
So did you come from a military family?
Yep. My dad fought in World War II, Purple Heart, twice, I believe. Was stationed in the European theater, and his brother was also stationed over there in the Army. Their other two brothers entered service later on in the Air Force. One of them even made it a career. And I even have a copy of my grandfather, my dad's father's, draft registration card where he signed up for World War I in 1917.
Oh, wow.
So there's a kind of history there.
Yeah. Was your parents supportive?
Yeah, I don't think, they didn't really voice pro or con to it then. I think they were obviously relieved I signed up for the Navy, type of thing. And it was one of those instances, I just had them over to actually their houses where I signed the papers. And I'm sure Mom hated to see me go, but Dad, being a military, why?
Yeah, and it was going to happen regardless.
He thought I was doing what I was supposed to.
Yeah, you might as well pick. So basic training, where did you go?
Went to Great Lakes up by Chicago.
So did they bus you there?
Yes. Yeah, we bused from Indianapolis.
Okay. So what were you thinking when you took off that day?
Probably I didn't know what to expect, and I don't know why, but there was 4 other guys up there, and the recruiter over there said, "You're in charge of these 4 guys to see if they make it up there and get where they're supposed to go." And I don't know, why, but we made it up there, and obviously, I think like most people that go to boot camp, about the 3rd day, you get to looking at how high the fences are, whether you can get out or not. And,
why did I do this?
Yeah. So
how long were you in basic training for?
I was in there for 12 weeks. And it was a different boot camp for me than most people went through because I majored in instrumental music in high school. Every recruit training company down there has a band to play march music and stuff, for the parade ground and so on. So I tried out for that and got in. And about 2 weeks after that, the Master at Arms they had was graduating from boot camp, and so the officers got together and wanted me to be Master at Arms for the band. And
Wow.
so what that provided me was I could go over to the band room without attending boot camp classes except for required ones. We could have snacks, which we weren't allowed to have in the barracks, and so it worked out pretty good.
So was there a memorable event that happened in boot camp?
Yep. There was, besides the band,
Yep.
thing, and, I got to watch my own graduation with my parents since I didn't have to march, but probably the biggest, and one of the things we did have to go through there was fire training for fire, because every sailor goes through fire training in case they're stationed on a ship, because there's special fires when you're on a ship loaded with ammunition and oil and stuff like that. So I went through that, not knowing what that was going to bring in the future, but the date that was most memorable was April 7th, 1968. And it was a Sunday morning. I got up, went to breakfast, not even thinking about anything. When I got back to the barracks, there were guys sitting around watching the news on the Chicago TV station. And behold, they were showing pictures of Richmond, Indiana, the explosion.
Oh, yeah.
That happened the afternoon before. And immediately I was worried because a girl I had dated a couple times in high school went downtown every Saturday for piano lessons, 2 blocks from where the explosion was. And I no sooner thought that, and the PA system paged me to come down to the Master at Arms. And I went down and rushed in, and it turned out to be a message from the Red Cross that everybody was down there was okay.
Oh.
So they'd thought to, let everybody know. So that was just a relief. So I never forgot that, though.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So after boot camp, did you go into specialized training?
Yes, I did.
And where was that?
It was in Pensacola, Florida, down at the Naval Communications Training Station down there. And when you're in boot camp, you get several choices of what field you want to go into. So I had 4, all of them were aviation related for mechanics and stuff like that. But you needed 6. So the counselor up there says, well, why don't you try communications technician interpretations and communications technician operations. This is where the French and the typing came into. So I didn't know what either was. He said, probably you won't get them anyway. Well, afterwards, you know that the only positions they push are ones that they need people in. So about a week later, I found out I was going to communications operation. I said, well, what's that? Well, basically, it's teletype operator and cryptographic machine operator.
Oh, wow.
So I spent 2 or 3 months down at Pensacola doing training down there, strictly typing. This was in the days of teletype tape and IBM cards.
Okay.
So I had to learn how to read IBM tapes, and that was my special training.
Wow. So were you stationed, where were you stationed when you were in the service? Were you deployed?
Yeah, well, I was deployed. I went being in the Navy, but I was never on a ship. The communications technician thing I got into required a top secret code word clearance that I had to be cleared for, which was kind of odd because one of the references I put down on it back in Richmond, they didn't interview him, they interviewed his neighbor about him.
Oh.
So that was kind of funny, but so I got sent to Guam to a communication station over there. It's out on a remote part of the island right next to the Pacific Ocean, and worked in a concrete building, no windows, with a gigantic antenna array just around the building for intercept. And
Wow. So had you traveled much before you got into the service?
No.
So
Not
what was
very
your
much,
think?
yeah.
How was Guam to you when you got there?
It was a paradise. I mean, it was 72 in the summer, and or 75 in the summer, 72 in the winter, and great beaches, great scenery, small island, probably 8 military bases on the island, between the Air Force and the Navy, and the base I was at was actually at the end of Anderson Air Force Base's runway during the time they were bombing Vietnam at night with B-52s.
Oh, wow.
So every night they took off over our base, and in the morning about breakfast time they came back.
So pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
How did daily life differ at each? Did you go other places besides
Yep.
Guam? Where else
Yep.
did you go?
Well, from Guam, I went back to Pensacola, Florida for advanced training, and this was in more technical in the cryptographic machine operation part of it. And from there, well, I had a friend in Guam too, and he got shipped out before me, but I ended up going into Sabana Seca, Puerto Rico, to another communication station there. And the difference was pretty big. When I first got to Guam, the Tet Offensive had just ended.
Oh.
And I got there, and we immediately started 12 hours on, 12 hours off working. I mean, I did that for 3 months. And when you're new, your job is to tear off teletype tapes coming out of the banks of tapes, read where they're going, and then stick them in a box so that they can be relayed on. And you do that for a couple of months, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. You know, you get the dreaming about tearing them off the divider in your cubicle. So, and from there then, when I got to Puerto Rico, it was just so much more relaxed. They didn't have near the traffic, still great weather for, suns and stuff like that. Got to tour the island, and a lot more social nightlife, obviously, in San Juan and stuff like that at night than what Guam had. So. And we were living off base. There was 3 of us that lived off base. So.
Okay. So what would you do when you were off?
Well, in Guam and Puerto Rico both, I got into playing fast-pitch softball. All the companies had a team, and enjoyed that. Had a car. When I was in Puerto Rico, I shipped down from Florida when we went down there, so went to the beach a lot. We took a, toured the island to the different places out there. They had movie theater on our base as well as downtown. I turned 21, so that
there's
took
plenty to do.
There's plenty to do.
So since you were out, had you ever returned to those places?
Yep.
No?
Well, I've returned to, the only place I've returned to is Pensacola, because I had 2 sisters that moved down there
Okay.
after the fact. But no, I've wanted to.
Yeah. I just wonder how it had changed from then.
Yeah, because Guam back then was, that was the honeymoon destination place for Japanese.
Oh, okay.
Just like Hawaii is for us. And when I got to Puerto Rico, it was the weekend destination place for young people in New York City. They could buy real cheap tickets to live on a Friday night, come down there, party downtown San Juan, then go back to work
Oh, funny.
on Monday morning. So it was just 2 different atmospheres.
Yeah. Huh. So your military friends, have you been able to keep in contact with them?
I did a few right after we got out of service. And today there's only one that I'm still in contact with, and he was stationed in Guam with me, left a few months before me, went to the advanced school I did, and then went to Puerto Rico just like I did. And so I got transferred and just followed. So he was one of the guys that we lived with in Puerto Rico. And, name was Bob. He's from Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. And about 8 months after I was married, another guy we knew called, and they were going to throw a surprise birthday party for him out on the East Coast near Washington, D.C. and wanted to know if we'd want to come out. So my wife and I decided we would. And we actually, on the way out there, stopped at Punxsutawney and spent a night with his parents and his brother, and then played volleyball out in the yard and stuff before we went in. And I remember when we got to the apartment where we were going to meet before he came there, between time I got out and I had bought a used Porsche 914, an orange one, and we'd always talked in the Navy about wanting one. And when I pulled up the apartment building, the guy's wife that invited us was sitting outside, and there was a girl inside that started screaming. And we didn't know what was going on, and I had no idea, and I got out, and she came out. It just so happens that the guy we were going to surprise had bought an orange Porsche
Oh, funny.
914, 2 years newer. And she was just scared to death that he'd showed up early. So we had a good weekend, just two of us, touring Washington, D.C. and stuff. So.
That's
But
neat.
I still see him once in a while. He comes out this way about once every 5 or 6 years. So.
So you mentioned your wife. So tell us, how did you meet your wife?
How did I meet my wife?
Did you meet her in the military or in school or?
Well, when I went to Guam, I'd been dating a girl a few months before, after high school, while I was in high school and after high school. And I left for Guam, and she went to Indiana State for college, and I'd been over there probably 8 or 9 months, and I got a letter from her, no pun intended, but it was a Dear John letter. And so one of my high school buddies, I'm still keeping in contact, going to Ball State, and I told him about it, and he sent me 6 addresses for pen pals. And she was one of them. Lived in Hagerstown, and I didn't get to meet her until May of 1970, and went up to their house, and we dated several times while I was home in May of 1970. And I went on to Puerto Rico then, and kept talking to her and stuff, and when I came home in January of 71 on leave, actually got engaged on my birthday on January 26th at my parents' house with her parents there. And so I got out of the Navy in December of 71, and we got married in August of 72.
Wow, and all started from a pen
Yeah,
pal.
hit 51 years this year.
Oh, wow, that's neat. So when did you get out of the service? What year? When was it?
71,
71.
December 71.
So what happened after you got out of the service? Where'd you go? What'd you do?
Well, I was supposed to go, I had a job as a draftsman in Cincinnati with the railroad, but I ended up, since we were getting close to, wanting to get married, I went to work for H.H. Robertson as a draftsman for a year. And we had got married late that year, and she lived in Hagerstown, was working in Newcastle. And so we got married and got an apartment in Cambridge City. And lived there for 2 years until they were selling the house and we had to move out. Guy I worked with, his mom had a house. They called it their retirement house. It was just a small house, but they rented it out. And so we got rented it in Bentonville, and we moved to Bentonville in the summer of 74, and lived in the house for a couple of years, and then we bought on contract the house next to us in 76. In 76, I joined the volunteer fire department down there.
In Bentonville?
In Bentonville,
Yeah.
And just started my 48th year last month.
Wow.
And my wife ended up being the postmaster down there for 34 years.
Oh.
And both of us retired in 2014, so, just things happen, and you don't know why, but we've loved staying down there, and it's just been neat, so.
Yeah, that's neat. So tell us a little bit, your family now. So you guys you're still living in Bentonville, and you're the chief at?
No.
It's all volunteer.
It's all volunteer. I was a chief for 3 years back in the late 90s, an assistant chief, and right now I'm a captain, and I live right next door to the fire station down there, as well as a longtime neighbor who's been on 3 or 4 years longer than I have on the department, so he's retired. So we're usually the first two to the station, make a lot of the medical runs and stuff, and I'm sure people in Harrison and Posey Township may recognize us from that, even though we're usually not this dressed when we make a call to your house. But
yeah, Bentonville's awesome. I mean, you guys do a lot.
Yeah.
And just recently, you just remodeled the firehouse, didn't you?
We got some money from Harrison Township. The siding we had on it was 41 years old and fading and showing the metal underneath, so we were able to re-side it and stuff, and completely different color, and it looks really nice.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks good. So tell me, are you glad you joined the service? And do you feel that it affected your life? How did it affect your life?
Yeah, it absolutely affected my life, definitely. And when you're young, you don't think about the progression of things and how they happen. Obviously, I'm proud to be a veteran, and there were a lot of veterans from the Vietnam area that did not go in Vietnam or even get near to Vietnam, but the military with hundreds of thousands, of soldiers stationed all over the world, all that still had to be maintained,
Right.
during that time. And so we did our part for, as we saw fit. The security clearance I got in high school, I worked for Indiana Ordnance for 3 years, up on 21st Street.
Well, yeah.
And about halfway through that, they had a development project that required the employees to have a secret clearance. And I applied for it and had it back in about 2 or 3 days because I had a previous top secret, clearance way above what was needed up there. So, that was payback for that. I got to shooting rifles and pistols competitive for a while. I was a reserve deputy for Max Huffman and Jim Caldwell from 76 to 81. Yeah. So I was back in that era. And things like that went on. And then last year came. And I can't talk this very fast because it's still an emotional type feeling from me. My 1967 class had a 55th anniversary reunion last year, and one thing they had never done in the 55 years was honor our classmates who had been killed in Vietnam. And I was on the reunion committee. I'd only been to one reunion in 55 years, but they made a Facebook post wanting volunteers to be on the committee. So that started at the end of 2021. And we were trying to decide what get-together could we have, like a picnic or something like that for all of our classmates. And we decided with the beautiful Veterans Memorial Park that Richmond has.
So nice.
And several other classes had bought a plaque and donated, and the class's name down there. So we decided to do that, and we were going to honor those who were killed in our class. We only knew of 2, but one of the committee members thought sure there was a 3rd one. And with some asking, we found out his name, and it's just remarkable how all this connection went. One guy's name is Bob Person. I went to junior high and high school with him. He's the only one that I knew. He was drafted in early '69. He was got married April 6, 1968, the day of the explosion.
Oh, yeah.
They got married that afternoon. And so he went into service. Went to Vietnam in July 1969 and was killed in September of '69. Through research and happening to get a hold of some people, we found his wife, his surviving wife, in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she came up for the reunion. There were some 8-year-old nieces at the time that hadn't seen her or heard from her for so many years. So they had a great reunion. Kerry Miller didn't have any problem finding out stuff. He was a football player in school. His mom, sister, and several relatives still live. The unit he was in has a reunion once a year at one of the members' house from the outfit he was in. So it was easy to find information and stuff on him. He was engaged when he got killed in October of '69. He had been in Vietnam for about 8 months. And I got a hold of his fiance back then. she is still very, very emotional about what happened and the plans that they had when he got back from Vietnam. So that was heart-wrenching. And then the third one was a mystery right off the bat. We couldn't remember who it was, but we had a member who did. And his name was Charles Firth, F-I-R-T-H. And I looked at him in my yearbook, and he wasn't in my senior yearbook or junior, but he was in the sophomore yearbook. And we couldn't figure out why. And I noticed in mine there was a Robert Firth, and I wondered if that was related or something, so I got on Facebook to search Robert Firth, Connersville, Indiana.
No way.
He actually lives in the trailer park up on 21st Street, and he told me the story of why he was in our yearbook. His older brother was already in Vietnam in '65 as a Marine. He wanted desperately, because he had other friends that were over there, he wanted desperately to get to Vietnam to serve with him. He was born January 1st, 1949. So after his freshman year, he was 16 years old, he quit school to go in the Marines.
Wow.
Well, the draft was so heavy at the time, their quota was full and nobody would take him. So he was already out of school, and they told him to come back the following year. Well, he turns 17 on January 1st, so he didn't go back to school because it was going to be in the middle of school year. So the following year when he came, they didn't have a room for him. The draft had filled up all the spots, and so he stayed out another year. So he finally got to go join the Marines in '67 and made it to Vietnam. And his tour started in November of '67, just a few months after we graduated, and he died in August of '68. He was over there in the Marine Corps. The job they had was to destroy tanks with ordnance and explosives that they carried with them. He had got wounded during the tour and had just gotten back to his outfit, and they went out carrying their equipment one night to go set up and destroy some gun emplacements or whatever, carrying equipment, and they made a river crossing. And the weight and stuff was so heavy that he drowned, and they couldn't recover him until the next day because of the dark and stuff. And so it was just heartbreaking. And once we found out this, we actually went to the principal over at Richmond High School, who happens to be a classmate, just luckily, and we were able to obtain an honorary diploma for him, and we presented that to his brother at our memorial service.
Oh, wow.
So, without the military, I wouldn't have had my life that I had. I would have never experienced that, and just being a veteran's.
Yeah. And I also want to congratulate you because you just won a very deserving award, the Hoosier Golden Award.
Yeah, Hoosier Golden.
From the state. And that's awesome.
Well, thank you very much. It was a total surprise. I had nothing to do with the application of that. Some very good friends did that for me, and I was dumbfounded when it happened, and I even told them up there they needed to raise their standards. It was just...
It's very deserving.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, John, I want to thank you for your service and your sacrifice. I just appreciate all you do. I mean, Bentonville Fire Department's awesome. I live in Harrison Township, and you guys are great, and
thank you.
I'm glad the service brought you to that.
Well, thank you very much, all of us. Thank you. We enjoy what we do, I guess, or we wouldn't be doing it.
Right. Well, thank you. Well, be sure to tune in next month where we'll highlight another veteran from Fayette County.